Today I want to talk to you about engaging older students. It seems to be the number one topic that's coming up across all my platforms at the moment. How to engage them, how to make it fun, how to make it exciting, all those kinds of things. We know that teaching older students is quite different to teaching younger students because they don't really respond to things like sticker charts or well done or good job. So how do we do it when the students are a little bit older? First of all, we need to give them quick wins. Contrary to popular belief, learned helplessness is not caused by explicit teaching or being shown how to do things. It's actually caused from prolonged, repeated failure. If a student has failed at something enough times, they develop a belief that they cannot do it and cannot learn it, and so they give up. One of the best ways to tackle this belief for them is to give them those quick wins as quickly as possible. In my first session with a student, I always make sure that the assessment part takes no more than 20 to 30 minutes. I can usually outline about 4 to 8 weeks worth of work for 1 hour sessions in that amount of time. And that means I can spend the rest of the lesson actually teaching them. It's never more important than when working with an older, struggling student who's lost their confidence to use an explicit teaching approach. Making sure that moving from I do to we do to you do ensures they're going to have success during the you do. And one of the ways we can do that is to make learning goals very, very specific, and also make sure that we've reduced the level down to a point where they can do it. Now, this is not to say that we dumb the curriculum down. We want to be thinking about their age and also respecting their intellectual capacity. But what it does mean is that the gap between what we do together, what I show you how to do, what I model how to do, what we do together, and then what you're going to do on your own is very carefully, incrementally stepped. I also spend a fair amount of time in the first session with an older student explicitly telling them how the sessions are going to work, what we're going to work on, and how English orthography works. Most of our students are aware that they can use strategies like sound it out to help them when they're trying to spell words, but a lot of our older students need us to show them that morphology and etymology also play a role. So I spend a bit of time explicitly explaining that to them. Another thing I find really helpful with older students is to speak really directly with them. So I'll tell them that in these sessions, it's going to be more conversational than their classroom teaching. Oftentimes when students are used to being classroom students, there's a time for being able to speak and a time for having to listen to the teacher as part of the class where you probably wouldn't put up your hand or ask a question. I explicitly tell my older students in these sessions together, this is a conversation between me and you. And if you don't understand something, that means I haven't explained it quite the right way. So feel free to jump in and just say, I'm not really sure about that. Could you re-explain that in another way? Or ask any question that you might need to ask. This reassures them it's a safe space for them to contribute as well. The next thing I make sure I do with my older students is to make learning visible. Now, we're probably familiar with visible learning in the sense that we tell them what the learning objective is or the learning target. For individual sessions, they should be SMART targets. Very small, very clear, very achievable. And in the context of working with older students, it's not just a matter of telling them what the target is, but I help them to understand how that smaller target fits into their broader study. I don't know about you, but most of my older students come to me saying something like, Sarah, I just want to get better at English. I just want to get a C in English. I just want to be able to write my essay for the book that we're working on. They usually have a goal of a bigger nature. It can help to reduce the objections when I'm trying to teach them how to spell if I show them how what I'm working with them on directly relates to that goal. So yeah, I know, I really want you to be able to write better essays as well, and we're definitely going to get to that. Just before we work on it, what I'm going to do is help you to spell some of those multisyllabic words that you're trying to use, because what I've noticed is you reduce your sentences down to words you can spell. Do you think that's fair? And if they say yes, I definitely sometimes reword my sentences because I don't want to use a big word I can't spell. I'll tell them, well, great. So the work we're doing here is directly feeding into your ability to be able to write those higher level texts, because less of your brain power is going to have to be used up to be able to spell the words that you want to use. And another really important thing to do with older students is to tell them, I want you to use the skills I'm teaching you now in your regular lessons. So we're going to talk about how these skills would be used in your lessons. And every week when you come back to see me, I'm going to ask you if you did that. So make sure through the week, if there's a time when you think, the teacher wants me to spell this word and Sarah showed me this skill, that I want you to try and generalize those over. We're using this learning in our regular classroom lessons, because for a lot of our students, that just doesn't occur to them naturally. Then when I do the review at the beginning of the next lesson, I ask them explicitly, have you used that strategy I gave you to figure out how to spell multisyllabic words? Did you use that sentence structure that we learned in the last lesson? Can you tell me how? Making sure they understand the link between what we're doing in tutoring or therapy sessions to the classroom teaching is a really good way to get them engaged in what we're doing in the sessions, even if they feel that it's not linked explicitly. Keeping the routine consistent, or in cognitive load theory speak, low variance routines, can also really help re-engage older students. Learning is hard and it can be a bit tedious sometimes. And knowing the structure of the lesson helps them to see how far they've gone through the lesson, how long is left, what kind of activities they've got left to do, and those kinds of things. So it can help set a timer for them in essence and make them feel that even if an activity is really tricky and requires a lot of effort in that moment, it's going to be over in 5 or 10 minutes and we're going to move on to the next section. I find that once students are really familiar with my teaching program and the sections of the lesson that we move through, they tend to end up saying things like, that went really fast, because they're so used to the format that it just felt like it flew through the lesson. Another area that can feel tricky for some teachers is praise. We know that older students see through non-genuine praise with laser precision. They just know when you're not being sincere, or even when you're being a little bit over the top. And if your background has come from lower primary school, it's possible that that was appropriate to use a really high, really positive voice for those younger kids, but the older students are not going to resonate with that so much. It doesn't mean they don't like being praised. Even adults love being praised. Think about your last work performance review. You would have been absolutely thrilled to get an exceeds expectation and have someone lay out all the ways in which your teaching was outstanding. Everybody likes positive feedback. It's the way that it's given. And the way I think about this with older students is we should use the same tone of voice we would use for adults. And it's more important to make the praise very genuine and very specific. So instead of saying, well done, we might say, well done, you caught yourself spelling that word incorrectly, and instead of just writing a letter over the top of the other letters, you rubbed the word out and rewrote it so your brain could remember it next time. Good job. It's not that we don't use some of those words, it's the tone that we use them in, and the context needs to be more specific. One of the other things I'm really mindful of when I'm working with older students is you have to stop negative self-talk in its tracks. I do not allow any, I'm stupid, I can't do this, I'm just a dum-dum, or any of the other things they might say. And again, I'm really clear with them why this is. I tell them, if you tell your brain that, it will believe it. Anything you say to it, it will believe it. And this is where some of the growth mindset stuff comes in. Instead of saying, I'm stupid, we say, I spelled that incorrectly this time, I need to practice it more. So giving them phrases to replace those words with, rather than allowing them to continue with negative self-talk. Multisensory teaching is another thing that some people struggle with older students. It's important to remember that at its core, multisensory teaching is just engaging more than one sense in the learning. And if we're using a pencil and paper, and we're saying sounds out loud, or we're spelling out loud morphemes, we're engaging auditory, visual, kinesthetic, and motor patterns. And that's multisensory. We don't necessarily have to grab out the sand tray or the shaving foam to work with an older student. We can make their paper and pencil bookwork multisensory by simply having them spell out morphemes. For example, DIS plus RUPT plus IVE is rewritten as disruptive, or having them say the sounds as they write the words. If the students ever make a mistake, I own the learning failure. So I say something like, whoops, I didn't tell you this should have been done before I gave you that instruction. That's on me. Let me try again to re-explain that to you. So they understand that teaching and learning is a two-way street. A lot of them are under the impression that if they didn't learn it, it's because they made an error or they have a deficit, rather than it might have been something that the teacher said. So I find it's really helpful to let them know it's a communication, and sometimes I don't communicate well. Maybe I needed to give you a bit more practice before I let you do that on your own. Or Maybe I didn't give you the right instruction for you to understand what I was really asking you to do. Let me try again. And we know we need to present age-appropriate materials, not just age-appropriate reading passages, which we know are important for older students as well, but also age-appropriate worksheets. And what I mean by this is the formatting is very important for worksheets for older students. I can't count the number of times I've seen worksheets where the word line is just far too short for them to actually reasonably write a word on that line. I think we've all had that dreaded experience of filling out a form where they've given you an email address line that's about this long, and I think, oh, how can I squeeze my handwriting in there to write an entire email address? Simple things like making sure the lines are long enough and the gaps are wide enough can make it a lot less frustrating for our older students, especially if they have handwriting difficulties. My general formatting recommendation is that you always use a size 18 font and line spacing of 1.5 lines. Of course, this isn't always possible, but where a student needs to write on a line, generally size 18 font is around about the natural handwriting size for most students. And then when you printed out your worksheets, it's best practice to actually try writing whatever words would fit in different spaces to make sure that they can actually naturally be written on those lines. And the last thing I want to talk to you about is novelty versus engagement. I talk about this quite a lot in my different channels. Novelty can seem like a really good idea, but engagement really comes from seeing progress, knowing that your learning is linked to what you're trying to do in your day-to-day life, feeling like you can have success, feeling like you're in a safe space with your tutor, and knowing that not everything that goes wrong in a lesson is your fault and your fault alone. Most of their engagement comes from knowing that they've made progress. Engagement equals success. So let me know what you've thought of these tips. Was there anything in here that was unexpected? Was there anything missing that you thought you would see? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, you can support my channel very, very quickly and completely freely by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. If there's anything else you'd like me to talk about in future videos, pop it in the comments and I'll make a video for you. Bye.